All righty, guys. I am fired up. My name is Brian Hilliard. We are here with April Porter. She is coming to us out of Missouri. That would be, if I got it right, is that the Show Me State? I got
That
that right.
is the show me state.
Excellent. Well, she's going to show us a little bit about what is going on here from a speaking standpoint. And we're going to specifically talk about what's made her successful as a speaker and what she's done in terms of getting in front of large audience, small audiences. And I do the air quotes if you're listening, the small audiences. There's no such thing as a small audience if it's the actual people that you want to be in front of. Okay, so we're using that kind of with air quotes. But April, thanks so much for coming out. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Brian. I'm excited for our conversation.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, give these guys a quick 1-2 on a little bit of your topic, just so they can get a feel, and then we can ease into obviously the meat of our conversation, which is what we've headlined, making you a successful speaker. What do we have as a topic? What do you talk about?
Well, I have a few different topics. Mostly, I'm talking to entrepreneurs, small business owners, and so it all addresses their journey in a holistic fashion. So, one of
Okay,
my talks is short staffed to super staffed, how to attract the right employees and retain them 4 times longer.
okay,
Um, right. And then there's another one that's pour gas on your goals, how to create targets to get you to your actual swag, which swag is a term that I've coined, and it stands for sanity, wealth, and gratitude. And
okay.
that's really the lifestyle that I believe all small business owners are trying to achieve, is a lifestyle where they feel ultimate sanity, not the
Yep,
chaos of small business ownership,
right.
and a wealth, and then that ability to make a great impact and to give back and live in gratitude. So that's what everything that I talk about, everything that I do is to help people reach swag.
Okay, okay. And then in terms of just so they can understand this, you're working with them post presentation in some type of consultative or coaching capacity, just so we're clear.
Yes, yes. I have a couple of different companies, and I take on higher ticket consultative clients, and then I
Right.
have a lower ticket company that includes coaching and other things to help small business owners start to get out of the business, working on it instead of in it.
That's right. Okay. I totally get that. All right. So that sets us up for our conversation, which is you're going in, you're talking to a group of people, let's say a conference or an event, whatever the case may be. Okay. And talk to us about what you feel has made you successful. Don't even have to get into large or small if you don't want to. Just in general, like what do you feel like are winning plays for you as you're going out and executing and speaking?
The number one differentiator, I believe, comes from my confidence.
Okay.
Um, I've always been accused of having a high confidence.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I say accused because people will comment on it like, wow, like you just have so much confidence. How do you
Sure.
have so much confidence, right?
Right. Right.
So that I think is number one, because
Okay.
I live that in my daily life and I take that to stage. And then when I'm on stage, because I'm so confident, that allows me to show up authentically with a lot of energy, to be
Right.
very entertaining, to be funny, to relate to the audience, to really be confident enough that I know what they're going through. And so I don't have to be shy about being really upfront about that and totally um, transparent and quite frank at times. And I think that then people find that very relatable. Um, and it usually makes for a great, 45-minute to 90-minute talk, depending on what I'm there to do.
That's a lot. We're going to
Yeah.
unpack that because you said a lot, which is all of that is really, really good. So we'll start off with where you start off with the confidence. So did you feel like, and this is just a question, did you feel like you had that level of confidence going in? And or did you feel like you had maybe a baseline level of confidence and then there was more confidence because success begets success? It's a little bit of a variant of the chicken or the egg question.
Right. For me, by the time I started speaking on stages, I had already cultivated that confidence. And
Okay.
that, in part, confidence truly comes from practice.
Okay.
Okay. So
Okay.
you got to practice. And they say it takes 10,000 hours to master any skill.
Right.
And so growing up, I mean, I was a competitive dancer my whole life. So I was on
Right.
stage performing.
Right.
I got into theater and acting when I was in high school.
Right.
Um, I went to law school so that I could be a trial attorney performing in front of a jury. That's
Right.
legitimately somebody said, hey, if you would be an attorney, you could perform every day arguing in front of a jury. And I said, you know what, you're right. So I
Right.
did. And then I mean, every court appearance, you're on a stage,
True.
you have to be eloquent about what you're saying. You have
True.
to know your facts
True.
so that you can defend whatever your position is. And you have
Right.
to really be able to think on your feet
Right. Right.
and explain something so that anyone who's listening to it can
Hmm.
understand what you're saying and can start to connect the dots and draw a conclusion that you want them to draw.
Right.
So, so I mean, that in and of itself was just practice, practice, practice for to
Right.
taking
Right.
all of those skills and then putting them on display on the stage.
That's interesting. One of the things we're heading into a little bit of an election season here in the United States, and not to get into a discussion one way or the other, but I think one of the things I think that I'm hearing is a plain spokenness, and I'm hearing like this ability, and some people would say that that's what Governor Walz is doing. Tim Walz out of Minnesota. There's a plain spoke. Whether you vote for him or not, it's a democracy. Vote for whoever you
Right,
want, but there's a plain spokenness about the way he um, communicates. You know
right.
what I mean? Like right? You've seen him speak before, like where he's just doing this, and it's a very it's a matter of fact, plain spokenness that has obviously caught the attention of a lot of people and create a dynamic where people feel energized again. And I think what I'm hearing from you is from this practice and an understanding of your game too, by the way. So you had a foundational element. You were telling us about the lawyer, trial attorney. You're telling us about growing up as a dancer. So you had some type of baseline level. And then from there, being able to move it forward and do that. If someone were to ask me that question in terms of did it, chicken or the egg, I would get into a conversation around it was a little bit of both. Like I hadn't thought about it in terms of practice. I think of it in terms of organization. That doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just the way I think about it. So like when I'm going out, so if there's people here thinking to themselves, boy, you know what? I see these guys and they're telling me they have April's telling me she's got all this confidence and Brian's telling me maybe he does, maybe he did, and whatever the case may be. What if I don't have that? I think or didn't have that to start with. I think part of that is that for me, there's a level of organization. Like, I'm going to have, and that's, I think, what you were getting at. You were talking about practice and maybe the cousin preparation. I would maybe use, again, organization where there's an understanding of what you want to say. There's a clarity of thought and purpose and how you want to say it. And then to your point, when you're relaxed, because you didn't say that, but that's what we're getting at. When you're relaxed, now suddenly it sounds like you're in a different space to be more relatable and to be more fun.
I 100% would agree with that. I mean, if you're tense, the audience is going to feel it. Energy play, whether you are in, whether you would describe energetic conversations as woo woo or not, you can't
Right,
deny energy exists,
right,
right? If you
right.
walk into a funeral, it feels very different than walking into a wedding.
That's right.
And so your energy on stage, the audience is going to be able to feel it. If
Right,
you're tense, if you're thinking about what you're saying instead of
right.
just being in the moment and connecting with the audience,
Mm,
then they're going to feel it. And they're going to potentially perceive that as you don't know what you're talking about, right?
right,
Because you're
right,
thinking about what you're supposed to be saying. So it looks like somehow you're searching for the expert words instead of
right.
just being the expert.
Right. No, that's an excellent point because I think for people who are listening, there's a couple of takeaways right off the bat. First of all, you got to be clear on what the heck you're going to be saying, right? Like there's not a lot of room. You talked about the trial attorney. You go into any type of courtroom, federal or state or definitely federal.
Yeah.
where you go in there, you better have your ducks in a row, okay? And you better have your A game, and you better be able to do it in like 3 to 5 minutes because sometimes that's all you get, okay? Like it's bing, bang, and these people don't have all day. They really don't. So it's being organized, clarity of thought. I also think, to your point, it's being able to come from a place of, like you said, authenticity and not being afraid to be yourself. And I want to get into that a little bit here because I think sometimes as coaches, there is this, I know I had this myself. There was this idea that I have to be a certain person. Like I remember when I was getting started, I started my business in '01. This was when I was in Atlanta. And this was maybe '02. Like this was within the first 18 months, no question. And we were at a networking event. It was in person, and we were at a networking event, huge table. There must have been 30 people. Like it was a big event. And we were to sit down, you each had like 30 seconds. And I remember it was coming over to me, and I had like a lot of time to think about it. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I have to do, this deal. It was the worst 30 seconds I'd done. I mean, ever. Because I got so preoccupied with what I thought a motivational speaker, because I didn't have coaches then. I got so preoccupied with what I thought a motivational speaker needed to sound like or be, or whatever I thought in my little head at that time. Okay. That's what I got into. So unpack this idea a little bit of this notion of an authentic self in the context of speaking. Like obviously there's a little bit of a line that we want to make sure that we're not, going off. Okay. But like talk about your authentic self and how people could bring that, because I think there's some reticence towards that.
Yeah, well, I think in order to really talk about that, I want to take just one half a step back to
Sure. Sure.
you mentioned being prepared.
Okay.
So I do think that the preparation allows you to be your authentic self. Again,
Excellent point.
because if you're not really prepared,
Right.
then you're more focused on trying to remember what you're supposed to be doing up there instead
Good
of
point.
just again being present.
Right.
So back in my days as a trial attorney, I had more than once defense attorneys come up to me and say, I have never seen a more prepared attorney. I've never gone up against a more prepared attorney. And because in that role, I had to anticipate what was the other side going to think,
Right.
because then that's what they're going to say, and I
Right.
needed to have a case to put right in front of the judge in that second to say,
Right.
"Oh, they're wrong and here's the case that proves it." So
Right.
so
Right.
so you need to prepare, and when you're preparing, look at it from your audience's point of view,
Good
not
one.
your point of view.
Right. Right. Right.
All right? Because then when you're on stage, you're not wondering what they're thinking. You're not
Right.
saying, "Oh, did they like do they believe that? Do they like that?"
Right.
You're trying to like rely on their feedback from them. And then particularly when you're in a large crowd, the feedback is not going to be consistent.
Right.
Somebody's going to be on their phone ignoring you. Somebody else is going to be disagreeing and shaking their head.
Right.
And you're going to have 99 people who are like enthralled, but those are the
Right.
people that are going to stand out to you. And
Right.
that can shake your confidence.
Yes,
So,
it can.
right? So if you know that going in and you're like, okay, most of the people at this audience they're going to, everybody in the audience is going to disagree with this statement, which I want them to do,
Right.
because then
Right.
I'm going to bring it around here and now they're going to agree, right?
Right.
And if
Right.
you know that, you can even create the cadence, just like I mentioned there. So now you have some dynamics. All that's planned out in advance. So now when you're on stage, you know it. You don't
Right.
have to think about it, you know it.
Right.
What I find happens when I'm on stage is that my personality, it's like a dial. It's me authentically, but I get dialed up.
Yeah.
So
So the level of the way I apologize to interrupt. I would use, because I agree with that. You're having an intensity conversation.
yes, yes, an intensity conversation. And so when I'm dialed up, I'm kind of operating on a higher frequency. And I
Right.
think that even makes me more sensitive to what's going on in the audience, not worrying
Right.
about what they're thinking, but
Right.
picking up more on the connectivity that we're having to each other.
Right.
And
Right.
so when I say something and I can feel like, oh yeah, we're connected, they're
Right.
agreeing, this is resonating with them.
Right. right,
then the next thing I do is usually kind of spontaneous, but it's
mm,
authentically me. It might be
right,
throwing out a little bit of a joke or a jab or
right,
of something like that that I
right,
haven't scripted,
right,
that is just me. And then
yeah,
when you get to that point, and this is where
right,
I'll wrap up this explanation,
sure,
but when you get to that point, that's when the audience who's been resonating with your words
right,
is now seeing like, oh, this person is transparent, authentic.
right,
Now I
right,
trust them on a personal level, not
right,
just the information with the statistics and the whatever
right,
they're giving me. I
right,
actually trust this person.
right. No, that's excellent because I think a lot of time as coaches, we want to have this statistical conversation. One of the things, I'm a spiritual person, listeners know this. I'm reading a book. It's called The Sacred Romance. I have a spiritual counselor. His name is Len Sykes. He's a former pastor from when I was in Atlanta. And we meet on like the first and third Thursdays. And one of the things that this book talks about is God wants to have a conversation about our heart. We want to have a conversation about our head, right? And we're constantly, as a people, we're constantly trying to come from here. And he's like, we'd like you to come from here. And I think the same thing is true when you're talking about speaking, where as coaches, we want to come from, oh, I am like, like, and it's just like, can we lift up this heavy? And we're so good at everything, but rather you want it to be able to be a lot more personal. And it's funny because this reminds me, so like I play a lot of basketball, and I'm thinking about playing today actually. And one of the things is you practice, right? You're going out, you practice. I've never practiced this more basketball in the last 2 years of my life than ever. Like I practice a lot.
Mhm.
Okay. So it's interesting though, when I go out and I play, like I might play tomorrow morning. I'm thinking about that too. So like when I go out and I play, what happens is it's interesting. And I think maybe you would relate to this because what happens is I'm going, and what happens is the move comes up like a flashcard, like it's hard to describe. It's not like a flashcard like a Barney, but it comes up like a boom. It's just like it just appears. It appears, and it appears in an image, like it appears in a thought. It doesn't appear in words. It appears in like a you know image, I guess. And next thing I know, I'm into that. I'm like, oh, good idea. Boom, I'm into the move. And I don't even remember saying good idea. Like I'm already into the move. It just happens automatically. And there are times, it happened last week. Guys were like, good move. I actually don't know what move I did. Don't remember because it happened so quickly that it just happened. And I think when you're talking about speaking, a lot of people like that's where we're trying to go, is what I'm hearing you say. We're
Yes.
trying to get into a place of our actor friends would call it unconscious competency, where we are so good at what we're doing that it comes across as the most natural thing in the world. And it sounds like that's how you're connecting with these folks.
100%. And it's such a great analogy because what I love about it is that you don't remember when somebody compliments you on it,
I don't. I
you don't
didn't.
have a recollection
I
of it.
don't. Nope.
And that's when I think we are truly operating like in a completely cohesive state, right?
Right.
Mind,
Right.
body, soul. And some people call it like you're operating in source or in the
Mm,
flow.
mm,
But when you're doing that and you're just being totally present and
right.
trusting that your brain, your mind, you have the knowledge, you are the expert, you are capable of communicating all of the nuances of the information that need to be communicated, right? So there's that. But you also have the heart, you believe in what you're saying, you are invested in your audience
Right.
in getting them this information because it is going to benefit them, and you
Right.
believe truly that they can come out of your talk better for having heard it,
That's
right?
exactly right.
And then that makes your body just like go with the flow, which I think
Right.
gets a lot of people really like tripped up when they're speaking, like what do I do with my hands, like I feel
Right.
awkward up here on stage, right? So it's a process. To your point, I actually belong to a creative actors studio here in St.
Okay.
Louis.
Okay.
And so every week I am going into acting classes and acting
Okay.
a scene or doing things like that.
Okay.
That's exactly how we operate. And when you are in that state,
Right.
act a scene, afterwards, people will talk about the choices. And I'm saying choices with air quotes for anybody who's not seeing us, but the choices that you made. Oh, it was a great choice to do A, B, or C during the scene. And you won't have
Oh,
you won't have a recollection of doing it
that's
because
interesting.
yeah, because it's the character is just living their life and you
Right.
just embodying the character. Um, so that's a really amazing way to practice as a professional speaker is to join an acting workshop or
That's
studio
interesting.
class.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you, it is amazing to watch the growth of like these novice actors come in their first class.
Right. Right.
And then like 60 days later, it's like we're laughing about it. Like, do you remember your
Yeah.
first class? Like there's so much more confidence and
Yeah.
it's a really so if you're sitting here listening to this episode thinking, I hear what you're saying, I understand it, but how do I get the practice?
Right.
So those are some avenues you could try in your area to do that, or virtually you could join our studio too, and you could come do it with me.
That is awesome. That is so awesome. Let's talk about you showcased this a little bit. I want to circle back to it. You talked about a larger audience and you made a reference. You were making a different point, but you made the reference around there's going to be one or two people who are not necessarily on board for whatever reason with what you're saying, and that has the potential to throw you off. I want to talk about that a little bit because that's something that's a real thing. Like I've had that. I even now, like I'll if I don't watch out, I'll wind up over focusing on the wrong person. So, talk to us a little bit about maybe. So, we're talking larger groups. You can make that point if you want, or if you have other points, that's fine. But we're talking larger groups. Talk to us a little bit about how you're able to connect with a group larger, 200 or more people.
Right. Well, when you get to really large groups, it can be difficult simply because the lights are brighter and
Great point.
you can't
Great point.
see things.
Yeah, that's a
So
good point.
yeah, so when you're connecting with a larger audience and it's difficult to see your audience, you're
Right.
going to be seeing maybe the first three rows right
That's
around
right.
the stage. And so that too can also trip you up because your pool of people is less, right? So then that means you're going to be able to see the person who's not paying any attention, the person who's paying attention but doesn't agree with you, and then a handful of people who agree.
Right.
So, so what I have always done is you've got to, again, this goes back to practice. I wasn't anticipating talking about practice as much
No,
when
it's
we
okay.
started, but you need to practice making eye contact and making
Okay. Talk to
eye
me about that.
contact
Yeah.
with people that you can't see, which
Interesting.
is crazy. So when you're there, the people that you can see, you
Right.
look, and I'm demonstrating because I'm usually looking down in this
Yeah.
scenario, but
Yeah.
you look down, you make eye contact as you talk to people, and
Right.
and then you look up, and many times, depending on the way the scenario is, if it's like auditorium or seating versus at tables, I find that when it's at tables, you can actually see silhouettes, right?
Right. Okay.
People.
I didn't know that. I haven't. Okay. I didn't know that.
Okay. So you're when you're looking out, you want to just find the silhouettes and try to, it's like almost like a little, like, think of it like a little red dot, right? You're like bouncing the red dot from table to table as
Good
you come
point.
along.
Okay.
And so you can do it that way. Now if it's auditorium seating, it's just a black mass. You can't see silhouettes. So in that scenario, you again want to just make sure. What I like to do is you don't want to get into a bad habit of pacing, like where you're constantly moving. But I will start center stage. I will walk to the left side of the stage slowly as I'm talking. I
Right.
will pause at the left side of the stage. I will look to my left, look to directly in front of me, look back over to the right. Then then I begin the slow walk back, and I
Right.
slowly walk back to the other side of the
Right.
stage. I do it over there. I come back to the middle and do it in the middle. And
Okay.
it's giving this um I'm not actually seeing anybody else's eyes
Right,
because I'm so intentional about being in their sphere, right? The
right,
audience
right,
feels so large, they feel disconnected from each other. So if
right.
I'm on if I stay in the center of the stage, then my right and my left feel like left out
Because they are.
because they are. So
Yeah.
you have to be the person who's including the audience in this experience.
That is such wow, what a great, great point. Because I think I haven't done as much auditorium. Like for me, when I go, I'll do like so I'll do conferences. I would probably say 30 to I was gonna say more than that actually. It's more like of the conferences I do, I bet you 60 to 70% are breakout groups. So that's 150 to 100 people, which is
Right.
fine. I still get what I need, which is the workshop trainings. Like I sell books, still works. So let's say 70%, with 30% being keynotes, okay, things like that, which is just how it works for me at conferences. And then obviously when I'm doing workshop trainings, you're not talking to 200 or 300 people either, right? Like I was down at University of Texas in San Antonio, 25.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that was fine too. Okay. But the point that I'm trying to make is I can't recall having been in an auditorium style where there's black mat in the back where I haven't been able to see. The last time you know what? We're going back 15, 20 years ago, back to Georgia Tech when I was speaking at Georgia. There was a event there. But the point that I'm making is that there are different things. The eye contact. I love that idea. I never would have thought about the essentially the ghost eye contact. I wouldn't have thought about that before because I've had to deal with that in 20 years. That's a really good idea. And I love the idea of, you're going and you're walking and you're engaging and doing things like that because that makes all the difference in the world. This has been absolutely terrific. Tell these guys where they can find you, maybe social media, or if you have, I know you're talking about maybe your webpage or something like that. Where can these guys find you? This has been great.
Yeah, so askaprilporter.com
Okay.
is where you can find me. And then on social media, Ask April Porter is my handle for everything. So every
Okay.
platform, LinkedIn is a great place to connect with me, just as
Okay.
April Porter as well, if that's easiest.
Okay, well, April, it has been an absolute pleasure. So we've got April, obviously spelled like the month, Porter, Porter, just in case you're playing our board game at home. And ask, I think everybody can figure that out on their own. So that's what we have got. This has been an absolute pleasure. I really, really appreciate your time. I hope people were paying attention and taking some notes to this because this was a really, really good episode, and I appreciate your time.
Oh, it was a pleasure.